Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon again. I'm going to be talking about technology and digitalization and how technology can be used in order to make our ships and our cities better. Today, however, I was asked to give another presentation, a different one, to elaborate a bit more on some aspects of what very nicely Mr. Jan presented before. So, the topic of the presentation today is on the One Belt and One Road strategic initiative by China and what this thing could bring for our shipping industry and our community in Cyprus, in Greece, and in the Eastern Mediterranean area in general. But what if you can change, please. Okay. Yeah. If we look things, before we enter in more detail, if we look things in China from the outside, what we have to see is that China is at the 5th generation of its leadership. And we observe that currently China is at the crossroads, at its crossroads when it regards to its development. So China seems to be moving from a resource-intensive growth to a value-added growth at a lower growth rate level, but still at quite good pace. So China seems to be moving from the exports and infrastructure investment nature to a new normal. That means that we are going to see in China a new regime, a new situation, and according to their latest 5-year plan, all the policies that they are going to adopt when it comes to long-term social and economic development will be focusing quite similarly to what we have been used in our societies, to environment, to innovation, to growth, and to social welfare. And when it comes to environmental protection, we are going to see in the next years quite a high focus. They are going to implement stricter industrial control damage with a goal to reduce energy and carbon intensity by 15 and 18% in 2020. And implementation of such measures we have already seen in shipping with the China ECA zones. They will do a lot of investment in renewables, and also they are targeting to continue the high economic growth, GDP growth of 6.5 to 7% per year. This is massive, and this shows the potential and the volumes of the Chinese economy, as Mr. Zheng said before. When it comes to further policy targets, we go to the supply side reforms that they are planning to introduce. We will see the attempt to cut overcapacity, to improve efficiency, and to boost innovation. And they plan to lift something like 70 million people from poverty, aiming to become a moderately prosperous society by 2021. And this says a lot about shipping of goods and raw materials to China. We are going to see an increase of the urbanization from 55 to 60%. And when it comes to the state-owned enterprises, this is the way that the Chinese economy is based and used to. We will continue to see this regime, but we will have a more focus on restructuring and consolidation. What does this mean? This means that China, they are putting a lot of effort and a lot of focus on restructuring their economy to come to a new normal. And as Mr. Zheng said before, one of the mechanisms that they want to very seriously pursue is this One Belt and One Road strategic initiative. And when it comes to this initiative, we are talking about the establishment of, on the one hand, a huge transportation corridor on land, onshore, connecting the eastern part of China via Central Asia and Moscow all the way to Germany and Venice. And from the sea, we are talking the connection of the ports of the east coast of China via Singapore, Jakarta, Pakistan, the Suez Canal, Piraeus, ending up again in Venice. So it's not only transportation corridor, but the way China thinks into this One Belt and One Road initiative is to see these corridors as means for development, for economic growth and development. So we heard before about the numbers. This OBOR will be covering 65% of world's population, about 1/3 of world's GDP, and about will be accounting for an equivalent of 1/4 of all goods that the world moves. So we are talking about numbers that, if this concept comes ultimately to fruition, will be massive. So what are the drivers and ambitions? Obviously, to expand the market, to have a much bigger market. On the one hand, China wants to have easier access to Chinese-made products. But not only that, this initiative aims also at creating regional growth, creating land and maritime links to developing neighboring countries and beyond that, lowering cost of transportation and making it easier and more competitive, and also have a means to ensure resources and energy security. What is important to understand is that for China and for the neighboring nations, this is a vital transport route for the imports of oil, gas, and other natural resources. And if we want to see what will be the means to increase the performance of such a transportation network, then we should be looking at the upgrade of ports, improved logistics, lowering trade barriers, and infrastructure building as part of bilateral agreements. Railways, nuclear and power plants, ports, new ships, and so on and so forth. What is the need for shipping in all this initiative? We are focusing, and China is focusing on better infrastructure and connectivity. And we are talking about a huge investment plan of 2 to 3 trillion USD in infrastructure development that obviously will be creating a massive need for building materials, equipment, and raw materials trading and transportation. So a lot of good opportunity for us in the shipping industry. Then the good infrastructure along the Belt and the Road can also promote the international trade, which will in turn create, again, shipping volumes. And the improved connections between sea and land, the land lengths of trade movements can raise overall transport efficiency and lead towards the reduction of costs. But let's now see a couple of practical examples of what is already happening between this One Belt and One Road initiative. For instance, we see this port of Gwadar in Pakistan. This is a land, you see that in the picture, that almost nothing was existing before that initiative came into place. Gwadar, however, after this transportation logistics analysis in this initiative proved, seemed to be a much more efficient location for transshipment towards the Western China and Central Asia. And what has happened is that the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is funded up to 46 billion already in order to start the development that you see in these port facilities. Also, the shipment from China to the Piraeus port via the Indian Ocean and the Suez Canal could possibly save something like 10 days towards the Central or Eastern European countries than the traditional routes in Europe. Another opportunity that comes to maritime from this OBOR initiative is to create the potential new demands and logistics hubs for container shipping, as we are going to have outflows of capital to the countries along the belt and the road that will lead to higher living standards and more middle-class consumers demanding container shipping and logistics, new routing and coverage. And of course, the creation of potential new trade flows from the import and export of materials and equipment, as this will be needed for new projects in this, under this initiative and these investments. Another thing, something in our area and in Greece, Piraeus. I mean, Cusco has invested in the port of Piraeus in 2008, as in this OBOR, in this concept, Piraeus has a very central location, and they have done a huge investment, and what we have seen is that the port has increased the capacity 10 times, close to 4 million TEUs, and the Piraeus Port Authority profits has increased in 2015 by 24%. So we see higher investments, new infrastructures, new shipping logistics, new routes. Everything gives much more incentives for bigger activity in shipping and for bigger profits. What they are discussing nowadays is how they can revive, upgrade, and utilize also the ship repair zones around the Piraeus port area. This has been an area that is abandoned the last decade or so, and now, under these initiatives, might come again to use and to new developments. It was mentioned before, but I think that it is good to show the numbers. When it comes to the financial support for maritime-related projects under this initiative, we see that a lot of money is being put aside for the investments. There is a plan to use something like 240 billion US dollars to fund OBOR-related investment projects. China's Silk Road Infrastructure Fund is offering 40 billion. The Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank is offering 100 billion for such investments, and the New Development Bank of the BRICS countries another 100 billion. Other examples of where this money has already started going to the Asian, Southeast Asian Free Trade Area, already being invested in port facilities, transportation, and communications. In Pakistan, the 46 billion USD investment in Gwadar that we mentioned before. Australia, free trade agreement on a bilateral context. 95% under this agreement of Australian exports to China are tariff-free. And China accounts for 1/3 of Australian exports when it comes to LNG, which is a lot of shipping activity. Singapore, we have the continuation of the development of the Suzhou Industrial Zone and the Tianjin Eco-City, among numerous other cooperation areas. Thailand, railway, hydropower, energy and education, and Indonesia, infrastructure, agriculture, finance, energy, FSRU contracts lately. I mean, all these are coming as part of this strategic initiative to upgrade the development and to create more intensive economic development and economic growth zones. As a result, we see also from the inside of China to focus better and higher their maritime and shipping development ambitions. So they have named the development plans for key ports that they want to create as global centers, like Shanghai, Tianjin, Dalian, Xiamen, and Shenzhen, Guangzhou, all the way to Ningbo. And they are focusing not only in the infrastructure, but also on the use of smart ports as means for increasing efficiency and automation. they focus more and more, as we just heard, on ships and equipment. They invest a lot on ship design, and they strengthen R&D in these areas. And these are things that we feel and we see also as DNVGL. And they are now entering into the ice-breaking vessels, new buildings. They are becoming stronger with the building of drill ships, deep water space station vessels, and all these concepts are being worked in China. Last but not least, in order to have the capability to do more and more on these things, they put a lot of investment and a lot of focus on R&D. They collaborate with universities, they collaborate with classification societies. They want to move one step ahead. To conclude, and I think rather to stimulate further discussion and thoughts about the One Belt, One Road concept, I think that OBOR is indeed creating and will be creating even more sought after economic activity and economic possibilities. Of course, geopolitics, global geopolitics are always an uncertainty. We have new US administration, we have developments in the UK side with Brexit, and we don't know what this and how this will affect the global geopolitics. But still, for us, the question and what we have to do is to think how, as shipping industry and as ship owners and classification societies, we can benefit of these opportunities and we can take advantage. Thank you very much for your attention.
Whether they have any questions, but I think just as a comment, you mentioned the word uncertainty 2 or 3 times. I just want to elaborate on the fact that in our shipping business, the only thing which is certain is our uncertainty. Thank you.